and we are. All right. All right, we have a main motion by Ms. Wolf-Boynton.
Motion that the Milford Board of Education adopt the budget for 2025-2026 in the amount of $114,017,417 with line item adjustments as recommended by the administration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Clemender. Okay, we have discussion or amendments. Do you have any amendments, Ms. Preet, that you'd like to?
I do not.
None? All right. Since you made the main motion, Ms. Wolf-Boynton, do you have any amendments?
Yes, I do have an amendment.
Okay, let me pass these out, please. So this is the information on the amendment that Ms. Wolf-Boynton will read. This way.
What, there's a staple in it.
It's a staple on the
Yep.
left. Staple
There's
on the
2
left.
pages.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
I
yeah.
ripped it apart, I didn't mean to. Okay, it's on the right.
Okay.
It's on the right.
I know that threw
That's
me.
fine,
I
too.
think
Okay.
okay.
Adam needs one.
Yep, he's got one.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, am I good to go?
Yes.
Okay, so motion, I move to strike the administration's recommended adjustments and replace with the following. Line item 1110, reduce district administrator, $175,670. Line item 1111, reduce middle school FTEs, $260,000. Line item 1111, reduce high school FTEs, $130,000. Line item 1111, reduce district teacher leaders, $65,000. Line item 1111, reduce art teacher, $65,000. Line 1111, reduce music teacher, $65,000. Account 1111, reduce health teacher, $65,000.
Right.
Right, okay. 1118, reduce curriculum work, make it $35,183. 1121, reduce high school secretaries, $80,000. 1122, reduce high school custodians, $104,000. Line 7350, reduce technology and infrastructure upgrades, $33,513. 7392, reduce capital equipment, $88,705. Account 6000, reduce per pupil allocation by 5%, $98,656. Account 7310, reduce equipment, $46,776. 79, I apologize, upside down there. 8111, professional learning development, 15,000, reduce 15,000. 6100, non-instructional, reduce 25,000. And then we are adding 65,000 back to 1111 for 1 FTE.
For a total of?
For a total of $1,287,506
In reductions.
in reductions.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion, Ms. Wolf-Boynton?
So, you know, as many people have said this evening, these were not easy decisions to make. And it's really disappointing that we have to be here at all. We have this process that has been put into place where we recommend a budget, the Board of Finance discusses it, looks at it thoughtfully, and has a thoughtful discussion about it, sends it on to the Board of Aldermen. And that process didn't work like it was supposed to, unfortunately. A decision was made by the Board of Finance to arbitrarily cut a number without real, thoughtful, or transparent discussions. And for a variety of reasons that I have a really hard time understanding, the Board of Aldermen, we could not get 10 people on the Board of Aldermen to see, despite all the information that they were given, that this kind of cut was going to cause us to make some really painful decisions. And I think we as a board had two options. We could close a school, which is impossible to thoughtfully do in the amount of time that we have, so that really had to be taken off the table. And instead, we had to make these decisions here. I can tell you that, many of us spent hours and hours talking about these, considering the possibilities. There were some things that just were really important to us, including adding back one of those full-time teachers, including having all the money that was going to be needed for summer school, for ensuring that that community coordinator is going to be there. I hope that all of those who were involved in the decision-making with this budget were tuned in tonight and were really able to pay attention and to hear what the administration talked about. I think that their explanations were, everyone was painful in some way, and everyone showed how much our students are going to be impacted. And if we are a town that is going to really invest in our future and invest in education, and the far-reaching effects that that has, everything from the businesses who come here, to the people who choose to live here, to the people who choose to work here as well, we're gonna have to do better moving forward. And I hope that we can move forward somehow positively. All I see on Facebook the past 2 days is, they caused the problem, they caused the problem, they caused the problem, they caused the problem. You know what? We have to move forward. We have to move forward together and do the best thing for our students. And you know what? We had no choice but to make these decisions this evening. I think with what we had to work with, we did the best that we could.
Thank you, Ms. Boynton. Other comments?
I did.
Ms. Preet?
Can we specify in the last one, add back 1 FTE, that it would, because it's the 4 are coming from middle, can we specify middle? Because there's 2 in high schools, but the most of the FTEs are coming from, that's what I'm assuming that says, just 1 FTE.
1 FTE at the discretion of administration was our thought,
Yes.
to do that.
I agree that personally that would be my preference, because there were so many tough decisions and variables that had to be factored in when we were forced to make that hard choice by the folks who didn't support the budget on the Board of Aldermen, that giving the district the flexibility to add that FTE back in the place where it could have the biggest impact on our kids and reduce the already hard impact being forced on us and on our kids made the most sense. So agreed, there's a lot coming from the middle school, but we're gonna see that impact in a lot of places. So I prefer to leave it to the administration to find a way to minimize that impact.
If you wanted to make a motion to amend the motion, you could do that.
I think I would be amending the motion just to add the word in the reduced middle school FTEs from 4 to 3. So it's not a dollar impact, it's just adding a
Right.
word?
Well, that would be correct, yeah.
Okay.
If you want to make that amendment, and then we can discuss that amendment and vote on it.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so just make an amendment that we clarify,
To add back 1 middle school FTE.
yeah.
So add the word middle school, is the amendment is to add the word middle school to that adding back.
Correct.
Is there a second to
Second.
that? Okay, discussion on that? We already heard from Ms. Mahler.
Happy to hear from you again, though, now that we're officially
Let's see if
discussing
there's
these.
someone else first.
I'm sure there's others.
Ms. Doyle?
I would like to leave it as is. I think we had a number of discussions about how the art teacher, the music teacher, everything is floating. It appears that they could be across any district, and I don't know, I just, this is why they're the administrators, not me. They'll find the best position for it, and if it has to be the middle school, it's the middle school. If it doesn't, the elementary. I'd rather provide the discretion.
Ms. Mahler?
Agreed. I would also rather provide the discretion, and I think that we very specifically recognize that our role is to provide budget lines and let the administration use that budget where they see fit. That is our role versus theirs. And when we are having these cuts forced upon us by a very specific subset of people, I do not think that subset gets to also then start dictating how the administration is going to spend its money. I think we leave the discussion open.
Other comments on the amendment to the amendment? Yes, Mr. Fermender?
I agree with Ms. Pri. I think that the adding back 1 of the FTEs to the middle school, being that the FTE is coming out of a core teaching, I think that's important. Not that I discount any of the other items, but I just think core is core. Our kids need to learn a lot of different things, and again,
I hear what you're saying. My clarification to them at the time was that there's nothing being eliminated, it's simply the class sizes are gonna change. So it's not like we're taking away a core, a subject or anything of that
no,
nature.
not,
So
no, but
it's an increase of the class sizes in those areas. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Motion, roll call, please.
Megan, the amendment of.
Your amendment, we're
Your
voting on
amendment.
your amendment
Yep.
right now.
Amendment
Okay.
to the amendment.
The amendment to the amendment.
The
So we're
amendment to the
voting on whether or
amendment.
not we're gonna add the word middle school
Middle.
to the line, to
Right.
that line.
Okay.
So do a roll call. Ms. Griffin.
Megan Doyle,
No.
Scott Furmender,
yay.
Tracy Irby,
No.
Tom Koba,
No.
Lauren Maller,
No.
Sorry.
Christina Pri,
Yay.
Adam Scobie,
No.
Mike Smith,
No.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
No.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes,
8-2, motion fails.
8,
7-3.
7-3.
3-7.
I said yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, 7-3.
7-3.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Okay, now we go back to the original amendment, which was the strikeout and then reading exactly as the changes that we were suggesting. Discussion on the amendment. Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wilfoy. I think she didn't make clear that we're adding back the community coordinator and the summer school. We are making cuts from additional places. What is incredibly difficult to sit here and do this over and over and over again for what I call this is a political stunt at the end of the day. Because when you listen to the mayor speak, he speaks about the cities of Milford lost because people didn't do certain things. And I'm sorry, he had the opportunity to raise revenues, and that's his job. Our job is to provide the best opportunities for our children through this school district. And that requires bringing the budget forward that we think is best. I've heard a lot of comments that we're just a rubber stamp, we don't ask questions, we don't do that. I know I sit here every week and speak for hours outside of this meeting discussing things that are happening on this board. A lot.
Can we keep the discussion to the amendment, please?
But in that way, in the amendment, I accept it because we've gone through the line by line attitude of looking at each thing that we've done. We've looked internally to go through that. So I'm for it. We'll go from there.
Just a process question.
Yes.
Right now, we're speaking on the amendment.
We have board comments.
Once we have dealt with the amendment, do we then have the ability to speak on the underlying motion prior to passage?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Other comments on the amendment? Yes, Ms. Muller?
Hi, Jen. I support the amendment because, as we've all acknowledged, none of these changes and none of these reductions are what we would want, what we agree is right, and what is we as a board responsibly put forward for our kids. But I think that the changes that were made in the amendment get us to a place where we continue to preserve the heart of the district in very specific ways. It allows us to continue the summer school and helping our students at the elementary and middle school level do what they can with what we are able to help them with to continue to close the achievement gap and continue progress being made in that area. I think that's incredibly important, not just waiting until high school when they're so far behind that it has to be credit recovery. I think helping them in those early stages of their school career is critical. I think the community coordinator position is also incredibly important right now for all the reasons that have already been stated. And I think being able to put back an FTE with the flexibility given to the administration to decide where that position can be the most impactful for our kids is the right way to go in what is already a difficult situation being forced upon us.
Thank you, Ms. Muller. Other comments on the amendment? Mr. Scobie?
I just want to say that I also am in support of this. As Ms. Muller mentioned, restoring the community connection coordinator, restoring summer school, these are things that will immediately impact our students. And we all understand that we're in a really tough spot right now. Having to make more reductions to our budget. And what we're looking at now with this new amendment is more reductions to less immediate student-facing things. And it's trying to have a lesser impact on the students, which is what we're all here for, is to support the students. I just want to also point out that none of these are suggesting that there was excess or waste anywhere. This is what we see as the best thing to cut currently to continue supporting our students now. But what we're doing with the other accounts is kicking a can down the road that will ultimately affect our students negatively in the future if we continuously to cut from these accounts. So I just want to point out that continuously seeing these reductions to our budget and having to make these decisions is only going to continue negatively impacting our students.
Other comments? Ms. Zerbe?
I agree with Mr. Scobie that year after year, those losses are just going to keep building, and it's upsetting to see the work that started slowly start to slow down and build up, and things that then have to be corrected at some point. But in the amendment, I'm happy that it has the addition or the re-addition of the FTE. And initially, the need of the community coordinator, I was okay with, but then after the discussion today about class sizes and all of the possible consequences that could affect the school community, I think it's important to have the connection coordinator in there as well.
Any other comments on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor for the amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the amendment passes unanimously. Thank you. So now we go back to, the main motion would be now that the Milford Board of Education adopt the budget for 25-26 in the amount of $114,017,417 as amended
Second.
by the Board of Education. Second by Mr. Fermender.
Discussion?
Yep. Discussion on the main motion. Mr. Smith?
Thank you. This has been a challenging budget process, and I feel like there's that old saying that all politics is local, but I feel like more and more it's been upended and politics is now national. It seems like our community is suffering the same fate as what we're seeing in DC, where we're talking about cuts and cuts and cuts for the sake of cuts, rather than talking about what's working and how we can invest in our community. And the current budget that we started with had already found $1 million in savings, but that wasn't enough for part of our city government. And we're forced to make these terrible choices that we've had to make today to come to our final budget. Thankfully, we've been able to mitigate some of it and reduce the impact to students, but it's still going to result in increased class sizes, and we've talked about that at length today. I would challenge any city official, appointed, elected, or even community members to identify any of the fat that might be in this budget, because we've gone through at exhaustive levels and really kind of detailed the importance of the dollars and what they would mean for our staff, students, and facilities. The choices by folks in our community to lead us to this point are painful, and they make these last few hours here and the hours over the last few months really the least fun part about sitting up here. Thankfully, we juxtaposed it some with some of the great student awards today, but it is really, really hard looking at these numbers and realizing what impacts that will have to the folks in our community. And the only silver lining I can find is that somehow we've managed to do this without closing the school. We did hear from many people over the last few years. In the last 3 years, our community has been going through a roller coaster of these constant budget cuts from boards that aren't ours. And it is really, really frustrating and really tiring, but I just want to say that it is really important, and I have so much appreciation for all the parents and the students and the faculty and our community members who've come out in support of our schools over the years. And especially seeing the young people talk about the value that they see in our community, in our schools, it does kind of mitigate the terrible choices or the feeling of in the pit of my stomach right now. And I do think it is important to talk about how we aren't closing the school, thankfully, with the budget cut. We are conducting a long-range plan, and who knows what that'll shape up to be, but it is important that we continue to have that community involvement and engagement. Because if it wasn't for that, today's choices might be different. And what we do know is that there are going to be real impacts to our students in our community, and I think it is important that we acknowledge and recognize that we're in this position because of an unelected board in our city government and a lack of any bipartisan support on the Board of Aldermen to put any money back in our budget. So I really just want to say thank you to folks in this room, to folks in the audience, and at home who've spent so much time also grappling with the complex challenges that we're facing. So thank you.
Yep. Other comments? Ms. Mahler?
So, this is just my second budget season here, which feels like it's been about 20, but it turns out it's only 2. So thank you all for that extra fun. And I remember sitting here last year, being in a similar position of having to make reductions and being confused about why we were in that position, because here we are, we'd done our work all year long, we learned all year long, we paid attention. We had done the work that needed to be done of the Board of Education to provide a continuance of the vision for the education of our children in town. The future of Milford rests on a strong education system for all of our kids, and we had done that, and we had put that forward. And I was really surprised and confused and to be honest, angry that we did the right thing. And all that hard work was, at the end of the day, slightly thwarted by 7 individuals on the Board of Aldermen who did not agree that the full money put forward for our budget was right. And I was confused by that because it all made sense. It all made sense on paper. All the questions had been answered. It just seemed like a different vision. A vision that instead of being rooted in 2024 and looking forward, was rooted in 1963 and looking backwards. And I didn't understand it. And then this year, we're in a position where we did our hard work again. And we updated and we changed and we progressed and we moved forward with our education system and with the budget that provides for the programs, the kids, the staff, the teachers, and the families in this district. And we did so in a fiscally responsible way. We put forward no new programming. We put forward a maintenance budget that simply took everything we did this year and moved it into next year, in the hopes that perhaps our city's fiscal situation would be different next year and we could continue building like we had been. And yet again, there was still a cut. We were still faced with a cut that didn't appear to have a lot of logic behind it. And those same 7 Republican members of the Board of Aldermen still disagreed with supporting a budget that simply said, do what you're doing now, again next year. So not only was it not supporting moving forward, it was actually supporting moving backwards. And I was confused again because that still didn't make sense. I couldn't understand why they wouldn't support our kids and our current school system and doing it again next year and supporting the future for our kids and supporting a vision that has a strong educational foundation for our city. And then it finally hit me that 2 years ago, we were in a similar situation where there was a significant cut to the budget and deep cuts were being faced by the Board of Education. Well before my time, but the board was being faced with a similar type of decision to deeply cut programming or close a school over the summer. And our current mayor at the time was on the Board of Aldermen. And that year, the Board of Aldermen actually voted in a bipartisan way to put back enough of the money to be able to avoid those significant choices having to be made. A school was not closed. Deep, significant program cuts did not have to be made. And part of what hit me was that the similarity between 2 years ago and now is that it was also a local election. It was also a campaign season where people were going to be running for mayor, people were going to be running for alderman, people were going to be running for the Board of Education. And that one vote to put that money back became a campaign slogan. You couldn't throw a rock in this town without seeing an I Saved Harborside sign. And it was like a lightning bolt of realization, and this year we're still in that situation again. It's a campaign. We're facing a deep cut. We had to make hard choices tonight about what to do with that cut, and we still have to vote on those final choices. And it is still a campaign season, again, where people who want to run for mayor are gonna have to run for mayor again. And I realized that the slogan is not about a sign on a sign. The slogan is about taking credit for things. And so I think it's important that we make sure that we give people credit where credit is due. And I think that's important. So as much as 2 years ago, the Board of Aldermen took credit for saving Harborside and used it as a campaign slogan, I would like to give the Republicans on the Board of Aldermen credit for the decisions that we make here tonight. Because we didn't close a school, but we did a lot of other things that I want to make sure they get appropriate credit for. So I would like to credit the Republicans on the Board of the Aldermen with reducing a district administrator. I think that's something they should have full credit with. I find it ironic because they're questioning the leadership of the school district and not the city. So as we're comparing things that may be top heavy, that's an interesting choice, but credit where credit is due. I think that we should also give them credit for reducing an additional 9 FTEs across all middle school and high school. There were already an FTE reduction in the budget, and they just decided to get rid of 9 more, so credit where credit is due. I think we should also give them credit for reducing the curriculum work that'll be done next year. I think we should give the Republicans on the Board of Aldermen full credit for delaying curriculum updates that ensure our kids get updated content materials that they need to prepare themselves for what's next. I think credit where credit is due. That's an absolutely important decision that they chose to have made. And I think we should give them credit for the fact that we are going to have to let go 2 high school secretaries. 2 of the people that you see when you walk in the door, whose faces everybody knows and who everyone sees and everyone loves. Each school is going to lose 1. So credit where credit is due. And the same with our high school custodians. I think the Republicans on the Board of Aldermen deserve the credit, as is due, for forcing the release of 2 of our high school custodians. So the impact that that may have across, Mr. Brennan, if I'm doing my math right, 460,000 square feet of building space next year, that's gonna have to be redistributed among the remaining custodial crews. So apologize to that team, but again, credit where credit is due. I think that we also need to give credit for a reduction in our capital equipment line. We need to give credit for the fact that not being able to replace our maintenance work vehicles as necessary means that we have a decrease in efficiency and responsiveness of our maintenance department, who, as we all know, do yeoman's work and create sparkly lemonade out of the worst lemons ever and have for years, and will continue to do so because they are that good. But again, I think we need to give credit where credit is due. So there are reductions. I think another big item, I don't know how you turn it into a campaign slogan, but the reduction in the per pupil allocation fund means that our building administrators, our building principals are gonna have a harder time doing the things they need to do in their building as they see them needing to get done. They're gonna have a harder time, let me make sure I get these things right here. They're gonna have a harder time providing the supplies in the library and media centers. They're gonna have a harder time funding library books, science equipment, resources for the counselors, student activities, consumables in their building. But again, credit where credit is due. These are decisions that were forced upon us by the Republican Board of Aldermen. And I think that next year, as we have worked as hard as possible to keep these impacts from directly impacting our children, they are still going to be felt. They're going to be felt by teachers, they're going to be felt by staff, they're going to be felt by families, and I think it's important to remember that. Again, I don't know how you turn those into nifty little yard signs, but happy to help brainstorm on some wording around that.
Right, Ms. Muller. Any other comments? Ms. Doyle?
I'm just gonna say, I am happy that we were able to, I'm not happy, forgive the language, but we were able to find any places that we were able to come to where we are investing in important places like technology and infrastructure upgrades. It's hard to realize that there are computers that are 10 years old and the light year in technology that changed that period. So I'm going to thank our administration for all the hard work and things that they've done here. And so coming up with this list was difficult. So thank you for your hard work and dedication. And I hope we can come to a different conclusion next year.
Other comments? All right. I said most of my piece at the beginning during my chair's report, but I just want to reiterate that these reductions will have impact, broad impact. Many might not be visible to people, but in the end, it all goes back to the kids. And somebody asked me a question at one point, about forward child-facing. What is and what isn't child-facing, and I would argue that everything in our school district in some manner is child-facing, has some effect on our kids. So, people wonder when we have a big cut like this, why do we go right to a school, closing a school? Because you can close a school and you can save all of these items on this list, but closing a school is not a good option either. So it's a question of choosing really the best of the worst options. And I agree, I hope that we have a different outcome next year. So with that, I'll entertain a vote. All in favor of the motion
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, and we have a budget. Thank you very much, everybody. I know this was painful. I know, I recognize how much work we all put into this, and I appreciate it.
Ms. Glennon, would you like to proceed with the approval of the ed specs?
Yeah.
That is a time-sensitive
Yes,
item
we
for
do need
us.
to do that. We need to do the ed specs item tonight. We can put the policies off until June. I would suggest that we try to do the ed specs and then quickly go through. I think typically D and E and F and consent agenda are not, they shouldn't take us that long, so.
Very well, thank you. So I'll turn things quickly over to Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Dr. Todd, Ms. Glennon, members of the board. So as the board is aware, we've included the Jonathan Law Tech Ed Classroom and Child Learning Center on our previous capital improvement plans. These are alteration and expansion projects that include the transportation studio, the wood studio, manufacturing studio, communication studio, STEM and IT studio, design studio, and also the Child Learning Center in addition to that. The Board of Aldermen approved these on 3 separate bond authorizations dating back to February of 2023 and March of 2024 for a total of $12,650,000, and that includes all the financing that goes with that as well. At that point, the Board of Aldermen turned the project over to the Permanent Schools Facilities Building Committee, at which time the Permanent Schools Facilities Building Committee issued an RFP, and after a rigorous process, we had selected Silver Petroselli for this project. Silver Petroselli has been working with the Permanent Schools Facilities Building Committee. They've also been working with administrators, and they've also worked with some educators in our school system to help design the projects. At this time, through that design phase, we have come across that we have significant escalations in the cost of these projects. And as a result, the committee intends to focus on the Jonathan Law project at this time for both the Tech Ed and the Child Learning Center at that school. And then if there are any remaining funds at the conclusion of that, we would use those to enhance the foreign high school Tech Ed facilities. The board's approval of these education specifications is a necessary component for us to begin the process to apply to the state for reimbursement, and that's the specific location that we're at right now.
So just for reference, board members, I did receive a letter from Attorney Matt Woods, who is the chair of the Permanent Schools Committee, which was, I found a little odd, because typically once a project is turned over to the committee, it is their project. They're kind of like the project managers, and we have very little say from that point on. They do what they feel they need to do. So I found it odd that he was kind of asking for our blessing to make this change. I guess I'm assuming because it was such a significant change. So what I told him is that our approval of the ed specs would give him what he's looking for. So if anybody has any questions on these ed specs, if they'd like to ask them now of Mr. Brennan. Yes, Ms. Preet?
So the timeline for making these additions or implementing these new or updated, so
Project
technical.
timeline?
Yep, the project timeline, thank you, of the technical education classroom and the Child Learning Center. Question 1 is, what years is this going to be happening to expected final? And then how does this line up with what we're doing on a long-range facilities planning? So I think some of this happened obviously before my time. And now that we're at the end of the long-range facility planning, how does this all fit together, I guess?
Sure. So we would need to apply to the state or begin the application process before the June 30th deadline. And for obvious reasons, we don't want to wait right till that deadline, so we want to apply as soon as possible. Once that application is in, then the architect and administration would go through like a plan review phase. We would do that with the state. And once we completed that plan review phase, then we would be able to go out to bid for an actual contractor. So like I mentioned before, we had selected the architect, but we still need to select that contractor, and we can't move forward with that until we've completed the plan review phase. At that point, we would go out to bid, we would select a contractor through an interview process, and we'd be looking to break ground. And these are preliminary timelines, you know, obviously there's plan review could take, that's a kind of a variable in the process that we have to kind of iron out, but we're hoping to break ground late spring of next year. And hopefully complete that project at the end of the following summer. So break ground spring of 26 and complete that in the summer of 27 would be the hopes right now of where we are at for project timeline.
So start students in these facilities in the 27-28 school year.
Yes, and so it would be completed, bless you. It would be completed at various parts. We're gonna have to work with administration at the school to determine how to disrupt as minimally as possible. But we're trying to do a phased approach where we're trying to identify which area we could start with, and then from there, are there interior classrooms that we can kind of section off and use parts of the hallway? So that's all work that's gonna come from a collaboration with administration and the architect and the contractor once we onboard them.
And what's the percentage state reimbursement?
Right now, it's currently, I believe, 36.29% is the number that's in my head. It's really close to that, if not 36.79. It's something
Okay.
very similar to that number right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's important to keep in mind too that anything we might do with the long-range facilities planning relative to like a high school, for instance, is really far off in the future. And this, I think the tech ed work would have benefit of other students that might be in the building, say, not wanting to say anything specific, but if the building was being used for another level of student.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, wait a minute, we have to have a motion.
So, motion that the Milford Board of Education approve the educational specifications for the Technical Education Classroom and Child Learning Center Improvement Project at Jonathan Law High School and authorize the superintendent to begin the application process to the Commissioner of the Department of Administrative Services for the reimbursement of eligible costs of the project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, we'll move down to D.
Thank you, Ms. Capazza. We'll go over our T&D reports.
Thank you. In the report, you'll find the listing of our job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. I did want to point out that we're up to 11 retirements. We did have another retirement, so it should be 12, but in looking at my list of retirements, one of the individuals is not retiring till like October 1st, so that would be in next year's money. So it's 11 official retirements, teacher retirements.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Kapazna? Thank you.
Thank you.
Disbursement report.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Glennon. In your package, you will find a list of all the cash disbursements for the month of April over the amount of $1,500. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Brennan? All right, thank you, Mr. Brennan. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Ms. Doyle?
The name of this changed, TRB Insurance Reimbursement. Is that different? It used to be like Medicare reimbursement, or is that new on here? I don't remember seeing.
Oh, that might be something, that's the teacher retirement.
That's the
Yeah,
teacher retirement.
That's not insurance, that's something different.
I know, I don't feel like I've seen this before.
Is it a once a year?
I know, but what is the
Those are ones that are submitted when,
Twice a year.
twice a year, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
That's the end of the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya. Consent agenda, motion is passed, but Ms.
Yeah, motion that the
You know
Milford
who you
Board of
are.
Education approve consent agenda items, consideration of minutes for the April 14th, 2025 business meeting and April 28th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting.
Is there a second?
Second. Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Board comment? Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. I apologize for going into board comment earlier. I think it's a great honor to serve on this board, to come here and to be part of this community and to make really big decisions because they're huge, impactful decisions which affect everyone's lives. And they affect our future, and I think it's important that we recognize that the work we do matters. The people, the teachers, the students, the staff, the administrators, the custodians, the secretaries, all that matters. And it just feels like over the years that we've just been reduced to a number, that we are coming back and hearing, you need to reduce your budget by X because we agree with you. We have a philosophical difference, which is what I keep hearing. It's not a difference of anything else. And when I come to this board, I don't hold any political hat. When I sit here, I think about what is best for our students and how do we go forward. And each of us brings our own experiences, from myself who grew up in Milford, went to Milford Public Schools, those who have not, those who've had children in the district, those who have not. And so it's really difficult to sit here and to hear each of these where it does feel like it's political. And I don't want that to be the case because it's only going to get harder over the years. I hope that next year will be different, but as hard as it is, we have a lot of opportunity in the future, and we have to have that vision for the future for our students in our district, and that requires investment by the community. And I hope that we find a way to make that happen, and that requires planning, which we are doing with our facility planning, and it requires innovative thought, and I believe that we are doing that, and we need to be given the resources to continue to do that, because we cannot expand programming if we have no increase in budget. And we are constantly, we're going to have a new teacher contract at some point that will affect the future. And that is our largest, most important item and budget item. And because we are, as Ms. Dr. Kataya says, a human capital business. So I want to thank everyone for being here and going through this budget season, for the staff, the administration, because we are lucky to be in this position to serve here and to give back to our community. And I want to give everything that we can. And that's why we are dedicated to spending our time, finding ways to find the efficiencies, to find the best, to have the least impact on the students. But make no mistake, what we had to do tonight will have impacts next year. And it will be felt. And it'll be hard. And I hope that we don't have to cut other sources to figure out how we can support on the other side. So that's it. Thank you.
Other board comment? Ms. Irby?
Thanks. Sorry. I feel this year we have, with the community conversations, we've heard from a lot more families than we normally would have in a given school year. And when I think about all their voices and what the things that they have said in those meetings, while we were sitting here, I thought that those families might be owed like an apology for the cuts that we had to make today. Not an apology from the board, but maybe an apology from the people that have forced those cuts. And I just want I feel like the families need to know that we continue to remember or to go back to their concerns and keep those in our, plans as we go forward.
Other board comment? Ms. Mahler?
Yeah, short, I promise. Absolutely. Echoing what Ms. Doyle and Ms. Irby said, we've come to the end of our budget process for this year, and it's been overlapping with the long-range facilities plan, which has had the great and wonderful and insightful benefit of allowing us to engage with the community at a direct level of depth that we haven't always done and haven't always had the opportunity or the reason to do. And I just want to say thank you at this point to those who have facilitated those conversations, as well as all the families, all the parents, all the students who have come out and spoken, not only in those conversations, but who have shared their opinions with us throughout this process. The number of emails, the emails from students, the emails from parents, the emails from people who don't have kids in the school but who care about the future of education in this town. The people who have cornered us in the grocery store and in the parking lot and in the cafeteria at school functions. All of your voices have mattered and made such a difference. And as Ms. Doyle was saying, it is an honor to be on this board. And it is an honor to do the hard work and put in the time and the effort to understand this and learn this and to make the best decisions that we can with what we have. Are we going to be perfect? Absolutely not. But you can darn well believe that we're going to keep trying and we're going to keep fighting to do what we think is right for our kids, regardless of who tries to push us in a different direction. So thank you for being a part of this process with us, and onward.
Thank you. Other board comment? Mr. Koba?
I think I got my voice back. I was like hurting for a while. I just echo everybody else's comments. I want to thank Dr. Katai and her team for putting all the initial work into it and all the hard work the whole board has done. You know, it's a privilege to serve on this board. You know, there's a lot of hard work that we put into reviewing this budget. It's a lot of hours and a lot of extra time, but it's worth it. And we do everything for the students. And if we do what's best for the students, we're doing what's best for the town. And I work in a company that's got a lot of people spread around the country. They're trying to pull them all back to Connecticut. The first question people ask me isn't, where's the best place to live because of housing? They're saying, you're on a school board. Who's got the best school system in Connecticut? They want to move to a good school system, regardless of. So, you know, you do that and you're helping the town in general. People forget that, where you're bringing tax revenue into the town. So, you know, it's unsustainable to cut $1 million every year. You know, eventually we run out of things that, you know, these cuts all suck, but, you know, you get to the point where you just can't make them anymore. And not to mention, we took everything off the table that had to do with infrastructure repairs and things that we were anticipating, that with a budget like this, if we have a chiller go down or something, we're in trouble. So, you know, but regardless of that, it's just, you know, I think like everybody else said, the community involvement, as we've gone out with the long-range planning study to see how engaged people are, you know, hopefully things get better budget-wise and we can actually continue the trajectory upward.
Thank you, Mr. Koba. Other board comment? Ms. Wolf-Boyton?
You know, I think what Ms. Doyle said about when she sits down that she's not wearing any political hat was really powerful. I think that when it comes to our students and our school system, the only thing that we should be focusing on are our kids. And I know that was echoed by several people tonight, and Mr. Smith talked earlier about national politics seem to have invaded Milford. And, you know, I really do hope that as we move forward, that we continue to see the kind of civic engagement that we've seen during our long-term planning, that we've seen people turn out at meetings in times of crisis here in our town. But perhaps if we all move forward with the mindset that we are stronger together, and perhaps if some of that engagement can be harnessed right from the beginning of the process, meeting, like starting from the next time we get together and have a meeting, then we'll have more educated people. Not really a pun intended there, but maybe there was one, I'm not sure, it's too late to know. But you know, one of the problems that is a recurring theme year after year is misinformation. You know, how we choose, you know, how do we save money? You know, how does the contract work with the teachers? What do the instructional supervisors do? So if we can engage more people, get families engaged and have them stay engaged, perhaps that would be one small way of us all moving forward together.
Thank you. Any other board comment? Okay, I just want to take a moment, and I echo what everybody else has said, but I want to say that I'm very grateful for the bipartisan support that we had tonight. I think it goes a long way. But I was really, really troubled by a comment that was made during public comment that suggested that there was some backdoor deals attempting to be going on during the Alderman meeting when money was not restored. I was at the meeting. There were 2 motions made that night. Motion to restore the full funding, made by a Democrat. Motion to restore $400,000, made by a Democrat, both defeated because they did not have 10 votes. The notion that there were offers made behind closed doors is troubling. We do our work in the public. We make our motions in the public. Put your money where your mouth is and say what you want to say publicly. The opportunity was there to restore, a third of the money that had been forced upon us, the reduction, and to suggest that at some later point in the evening, there were offers made that were rejected is ludicrous, because those offers did not happen in the open. So they didn't happen at all, as far as I'm concerned. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second that.
If there's no opposition, we are adjourned at 11:04 p.m. I'm very sorry for the late night. But work that we had to do.